So today's topic is one that I'm really excited to discuss because it is a topic that is so incredibly polarizing. People are either in such favor of what I'm about to discuss or they oppose it vehemently, as it seems with everything right now. So this really is no exception. The topic of discussion is the removal of statues in a variety of American cities. The statues are those that typically depict historical figures, whether it be like war heroes or previous presidents. People are calling to remove these statues for a variety of reasons. And in addition to the call to remove these statues, we also have groups of people who are removing them themselves, just kind of like toppling them via like sheer force and group will and rope, or we have people vandalizing these figures. So like I said, it's incredibly polarizing. We have groups that are so in favor of this movement and those who are so opposed. So I'm going to break down both sides for you now, and at the end I'm going to offer my thoughts on the bigger implications of what removing or keeping these statues will mean. So let's get into it. Some of the most notable statues to be either removed or are being called to removed are first the statue of President Andrew Jackson, located in Washington, D.C. Andrew Jackson was the 7th president of the United States, and he is most known for, or like infamously known for, what is called the Trail of Tears. And this was the forced removal of roughly 60,000 Native American people from their land located near the Mississippi River. A lesser known fact about Andrew Jackson is that he's also the founder of the Democratic Party. So the next notable statue that is in the process of being officially removed, and I say officially removed because it is not being toppled by protesters, it is in fact being literally removed by the people who own the area in which it currently stands, is Theodore Roosevelt. His statue is currently erected at the American Museum of Natural History here in New York City. So those who are in favor of removing the statue state that Theodore Roosevelt as a president symbolizes colonialism and racial discrimination. Teddy Roosevelt was the 26th president of the United States. He was actually the youngest person to ever become president, and he was the creator and leader of the progressive movement. Teddy Roosevelt is also the reason why we have a middle class in the United States today, as he was a firm believer in what's called average citizen fairness, which eventually morphed into the middle class. The next statue that has been unofficially removed, it was toppled in Miami, is that of Christopher Columbus. According to CBS News, 7 people were actually arrested in association with the toppling of this statue. And the final notable statue that is being called for removal is the statue of Abraham Lincoln, located in Washington, D.C. A little known fact about this particular statue is that it was actually paid for by freed slaves. So the people who were previously enslaved wanted to have this statue created, and they wanted it to stand in Washington, D.C. as a way to commemorate the 11th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's death, as he was the president who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which led to the eventual freedom of enslaved people in the U.S. So according to the logic that supports why these people want to remove, topple, vandalize, etc., these statues and monuments is because they represent hate, or they perpetuate a hateful period in history, or they memorialize something tragic that has happened in our past. So according to that logic, I wonder if people in favor of the removal of these statues would also be in favor of the removal of the following. So the first is the 9/11 Memorial, which is located in downtown Manhattan. The 9/11 Memorial was built following the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. So according to the logic of removing statues or monuments that reflect hate, the argument could also be made that the 9/11 Memorial reflects a hateful act, which was an act of terrorism. So would the same logic apply to the removal of this memorial? So the second piece of history that I wonder if the same logic applies to is a German-made World War II era freight car outside of the New York Museum of Jewish Heritage. So basically what I'm referring to is the New York Museum of Jewish Heritage that is also located in downtown Manhattan. It's located near Battery Park. Outside of the museum, there is a freight car that actually was used to transport Jewish people from their homes to Auschwitz. So I've actually stood outside of this freight car, and it is incredibly harrowing just being near it, knowing what horrific tragedies occurred as a result of people being transported from their homes to concentration camps in these freight cars. It is like actually really unsettling to stand next to, and it definitely symbolizes hate. It definitely symbolizes racism. Should we remove it? So while I'm speaking about Germany, did you know that in Berlin, in the city of Berlin, there are actually pieces of buildings missing due to gunfire that transpired during World War II? So the city of Berlin has literally left bullet holes and damage done by gunfire within their city to serve as a reminder of the horrific tragedies that unfolded during World War II, and kind of like as the sentiment to not let history repeat itself. So even though that is not an American city, I feel like the same logic could apply. If we're eliminating hateful parts of history, should those bullet holes be cemented and plastered over? So the reason why I raise these particular points, and just as a disclaimer, no, I don't believe that the 9/11 memorial should be vandalized, destroyed, or removed. No, I don't believe that the freight car outside of the Jewish Heritage Museum should be removed, and same with the bullet holes. Not that it's my decision, but I don't believe that those things should be removed. But the reason why I point those things out, because it identifies an inconsistency in the logic behind the removal of statues in American cities. If the logic behind something cannot be applied consistently, it's usually because the logic is flawed. So on the other side, those who are not in favor of removing statues often cite a very famous quote by President George W. Bush, which I will read. George W. Bush says, "A great nation does not hide its history, it faces its flaws and corrects them." I will add on to this quote that it's a lot easier to not repeat history, but rather learn from history when we don't run from it. I also believe that a shift in mindset is necessary, because I completely understand people saying that they don't want to memorialize hate and they don't want to glorify people who have done horrific things. That, as an argument, is fair. However, I don't believe that the statues or memorials that we have built throughout our cities are meant to do that. I believe that they are meant to serve as a reminder of historical events that have happened, that have been game changers, and this is how we've been impacted by them, this is how we can correct them, this is how we can learn from them. And my final thoughts are this. I believe that removing statues that we don't agree with is essentially opening what's called Pandora's box. It kind of erases a line that has been drawn, and who knows where we'll redraw it in the future. So for example, if we're making allowances for this, how can we not make allowances for X, Y, or Z later in the future? If we allow people to remove things that they disagree with, or we allow people to remove things that upset them, where do we draw the line? How can we stop people from removing anything that upsets them, anything that they don't agree with? So I think it really does open up Pandora's box and kind of introduces us to a never-ending what if, and it's setting a potentially dangerous precedent for where we're headed in the future. So if you agree or don't agree, I see it from both sides. However, I do believe we're entering into uncharted territory that could backfire maybe in the end. So something to consider.